Nova Knicks unite. Mikal Bridges is a New York Knick, and it cost a pretty penny.
The Houston Rockets are making some big moves ahead of the NBA draft.
The NBA draft is finally here.
We have the whole crew here. What should you expect? Who do we like? And what do we see happening?
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
I'm Peter Bukowski. The Big 6 in 60 is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we get the local insight from the top stories in sports, including tonight's start to the NBA draft and some speculation around Vlad Jr. But we start with the biggest story of the day. The New York Knicks made a huge move Tuesday, trading away some of their draft capital for net star Mikal Bridges. New York gave away 4 unprotected first-round picks, another protected first-rounder, a future pick swap, and a second-rounder to reunite Bridges with his 3 former Villanova teammates. The group helped the Wildcats win a pair of national championships in 3 years, but can they bring the same kind of success to Madison Square Garden right away? Locked On Knicks host Alex Wolf and Gavin Shaw go over the trade and tell you where this deal puts New York in the ranks of the Eastern Conference. Spoiler alert, it's high.
We were trying to take the sober approach to this and look at it objectively and get into the amount the Knicks had to give up and blah, blah, blah in the first segment. But we got derailed on the fact that this turns the Knicks into a title contender, which is obviously the lead here. So I'm glad, it's good that we lead with that. But let's just real quick, before we get into some of the cap implications and stuff, I'm curious, how do you feel about the pick compensation? Like, this is a pretty large pick package. I mean, this is one of the bigger pick packages that has gone out for any player in the NBA in the last 4 years. I mean, the only time that you're looking at something kind of similar to this, I guess maybe would be like the Gobert trade. I want to say maybe one of the Harden trades, there was a decent amount.
Harden to the Nets was quite. That was 4 picks and 4 swaps. So that was everything. Durant was almost everything. I think 4 picks, 3 swaps in that one. So.
Okay, yeah. So I guess it's kind of right up there with those, though. It's 5 first-round picks and a swap later on in 2028, and then a second, which I can only assume the second-round pick next year is probably the Knicks own Detroit's next year. It's probably that one. So that's a valuable second-round pick. That's almost like another late first-round pick if Detroit doesn't make some monumental improvements this offseason. And then, they get one other second back. After this, when we get into the nitty gritty, I'll try to figure out which second maybe, but I'm sure it'll just come out too. But I don't know what second it is in 2026 that comes back. So I guess you sort of recoup that and kick the can down the line a little bit, but pretty heavy pick haul. Do you feel all right with it? I kind of find that I land on, I'd rather do that than give up more players, because at this point, the players are the most valuable thing to the ultimate goal, which is winning a championship. But of course, this does carry the risk that if this doesn't work out, this might be one of those deals that you look back on and say, man, they really pushed it all in and they didn't win a championship. Maybe in 2029, we're moaning about this, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the downside is only in that the Knicks are still extraordinarily reliant on Jalen Brunson, because there isn't anyone else on this team that's an offensive fulcrum in the same way. Obviously, Julius Randle can give you some of that, and let's in the worst case scenario where Brunson was early on in the year out for the season, this still might be a 50-win team, and that's if they can take some of that excess equity and find a point guard for a year. So that's where the downside is just a little capped in my mind. I just cannot imagine that the Knicks won't be a playoff team for the next 3 or 4 seasons, and as long as Brunson is on this roster and even relatively healthy. So that is the good news here. I think the concern comes in those later years where there's just the Knicks have traded away their young core, obviously, right? RJ Barrett is out the door. Emmanuel Quickly is out the door. We'll talk about in a second. Mitchell Robinson could, in quick succession, be out the door. And you look at that 2031 pick, and you say, all right, is that going to be dicey? Is that going to come back to bite the Knicks? But if that is the trade-off again for years and years of contention, I don't think that's an issue here. And I think you kind of hit on the most important point. The Knicks gave up an excess amount of picks so they wouldn't have to give up players. Like you go to that James Harden trade, the Nets give up Karis LeVert. They give up Jared Allen. The Kevin Durant trade, the Suns give up Mikal Bridges. They give up Cam Johnson. And all those trades, those teams like ended up ultimately not winning titles. I mean, the Nets, you could argue it was, and it probably rightfully was because James Harden and Kyrie Irving got hurt. That's why that didn't work out. But you look at the Suns, they were totally depleted from a depth perspective. And even still, like they doubled down on that more. And now they are like the most depth lacking team, the shallowest team, I guess, in the NBA. Not an issue for the New York Knicks because they didn't trade away an excess amount of players. And even when they had to trade away guys for OG Anunoby, it was not a problem because they had this depth built up. They have picks to kind of restock the coffers. And hopefully when you look forward to those future years, they're those guys that they take this year, they're going to hit one of those picks. And historically they have hit those picks. The single biggest thing obviously is just like it remains a complete disaster if OG Anunoby were to somehow go to another team. Again, by making this deal, I assume the Knicks essentially have a deal done for OG, and all the reporting we've heard tonight from guys like Ian Begley and Adrian Wojnarowski suggests that is all but a certainty that Anunoby will be back.
Yeah, and we're going to talk plenty about the draft. We're lucky enough we're going to get to be in attendance at the draft tomorrow, which is dope. Yeah. And
come hang with us. I was going to say, when
if we have time, we are going to be working. So
no, you are. I'll be high fiving in the crowd. So.
Yeah, you'll be chugging a beer with someone somewhere, and I'll be like,
after today, you couldn't blame me.
Gavin, get over here. We have to talk to so and so. Anyway, hopefully we'll be recording a pod from there, so you'll hear more from us about the draft tomorrow. But I mean, I'm with you that the fact that they left those picks untouched, I think, is really important in this whole equation. That it allows you to maybe swing for the fences a little more in the draft, which is good. If someone like an Isaiah Collier falls to you or something, or I'm trying to think like Jacoby Walter, like someone like that, like someone where it's like they had kind of, or Khalil Ware, where it's like they had sort of a disappointing college career, disappointing single season or 2 seasons or whatever, but have all the potential in the world. Now you have this luxury of like, well, we can just kind of like end a bench these dudes. We can put them in Westchester a little bit. We can give them the Deuce McBride treatment and let them come along slowly. And then maybe by the time that they reach their, that they're in their second, third, whatever year, if you have to make some difficult money decisions, and let's say it comes down to like, oh man, like, Mitchell Robinson has to go, or let's say you even like re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein, and then, 2 years down the line with all the extensions kicking in, the luxury tax and everything, it's like, oh man, it's tough, but we got to get rid of Hartenstein to be able to give us any flexibility to do anything. Then maybe you've got a guy waiting in the wings that can just step right in and be ready to go. So I think the Knicks have positioned themselves well by holding on to all those picks. And I almost wonder if they, I would be willing to bet that Brooklyn probably came to them initially and was like, give us one of those picks, tomorrow. And they were probably like, you know what? No, take the Milwaukee one instead, or something. Like, we want to hold on to all these because we realize the importance of these end of bench spots this year. And like, of all the years for us to draft, this is going to be it. I mean, that's enough talking about the draft in a Mikal Bridges episode though, but I'm with you too. I think OG is basically a done deal. I'm not going to lie. I would not be surprised if, like, by the time the draft hits tomorrow, if we haven't already, or today, whenever you're listening to this, loyal listener, if we haven't already heard something about, like OG Anunoby is intending to re-sign with the Knicks on an X amount of dollars contract. Like this is happening. Because I think now, they're probably more likely to give him more or less a blank check and say like, so let's just get this done, dude. Like, let's go try to win a championship. You and Mikal Bridges is one of the most disgusting defensive duos in the history of the NBA. Like, this is going to be so much fun. Like, just come here. Let's win a freaking championship.
Stay up to date on all things Knicks by subscribing to Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, the Knicks sent away Mikal Bridges and went into full rebuild mode Tuesday, making deals to get picks from both the Knicks and the Rockets. What's next for Brooklyn? We'll find out on the Big 6 in 60. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. I mean, keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up a bet anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, 5 teams have odds better than 10-1 to win the World Series. According to FanDuel, the LA Dodgers are the favorites, plus 320. Right behind them, the Yankees and Phillies, each with odds at plus 450. I have that Phillies ticket. I think it's 16-1, maybe longer. But there's the Braves, 9-1, and the Orioles at plus 950. And the Guardians, who currently look like a really, really good team, at 22-1. Hold on. Can I just do that right now? Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60, where our local experts take a deeper dive into the day's biggest sports stories. I'm Peter Bukowski. The Nets got 5 first-round picks from the New York Knicks Tuesday, but Brooklyn made a deal with the Rockets as well. Brooklyn got its own 2026 first-round pick back from Houston in exchange for Phoenix's pick in 2027. Are you following all of this? There will be a test later. The Nets also gave the Rockets rights to swap first-round picks with Brooklyn in both 2025 and 2029, with many of those picks coming from too many different teams for me to list off right now. The point is, the Nets are committed to the rebuild and just got a bunch of picks to get started. Locked On Nets host Doug Norrie and Adam Armbrecht sort through a busy day for the Brooklyn War Room.
Mikal Bridges is sent across town to the New York Knicks. That alone is a historic trade. The Nets trading with the Knicks and sending a player like of consequence, much less anybody of consequence in Mikal Bridges, sending him across town. That alone is major news. The Knicks send back 4 unprotected picks. This is 2025, 2027, 2029, 2031, a 2025 protected Milwaukee first, a 2028 unprotected pick swap, and a 2025 second rounder for Bridges. And the Nets are going to send over a 2026 second round pick. Going to get to the other part of this deal in a second. Adam, I don't think I've ever said your name on the podcast. I think when my wife says my name and I'm like, hey, who are you talking to? We've been together forever. Like, you can just talk to me. I know you're talking to me. What was your reaction when you heard this?
Shocked. I mean, absolutely shocked from every single really level of it. From a Brooklyn Nets perspective, they seemed like they were going to hold on to Mikal Bridges like the 2025 offseason, in spite of what we've talked about. So there's some irony here that you and I have been pushing for the Brooklyn Nets to make a massive decision like this. Yet we thought they'd be going towards 2025 offseason, bringing in the future stars, having that core. That's step number one. The part about with the New York Knicks is absolutely mind-blowing, because you do not make these type of trades when it's in division, when it's city, when you're competing for the headlines of that city. But it probably leads to, when we go about what you get back in a haul like this, I don't think we felt there was the ability maybe still to get this level of pick package back for a player like Mikal Bridges, at least at this point. This is the New York Knicks saying, we want to compete now. We believe that he's the missing piece. We know all the connections roster over there, obviously. And they were willing to say, open up the vault, whatever you want. And that probably is the needle move for Sean Marks to make a decision like this. You heard the term Godfather offer. Would that be what it took? This probably equates to that, to make the Brooklyn Nets answer this call and make this trade.
And the second part of this is what makes it all sort of snap completely into focus, because the first part of this, which is, Sean Marks had to have been incredible. I mean, this is such an understatement. Had to have been incredibly busy because within moments of this Bridges deal going down, the second deal is announced, and that is the Nets are trading the 2025 Suns pick swap and the 2027's first round. I'm just going to sum this up. They're basically trading all the Suns picks back 1-to-1 to Houston for the Nets picks and swaps back, right? So they're going to get back into the 2025 draft, which has been talked about as being, the Cooper Flag draft and a lot of other talent. They're getting that back, that 26 pick that had gone out in the Harden trade. And it's a 25 swap. So they're going to be good to go on being able to tank and not have to worry about swapping with the Rockets. And then the 2026 pick, which was just a straight up pick. Essentially, on a high level, this is what the Nets did. They traded Bridges for 5 picks, for 5 first rounders from the Knicks, basically. And then they get back into a position where there can be in charge of their own, in charge of their own tank, be their own tank commanders, in a way that we have been sort of advocating if they were going to make this move, if they were going to make the Bridges move and decide to make sure that they were fully pivoting into this reset. Part of that reset had to be that they got their pick control back, because there makes no sense to tank if you're just going to hand the pick swap in the 25 draft over to the Rockets, who are probably going to be pretty good. And so being able to make those two moves simultaneously, I'm sure they were contingent on each other. I'm sure that they were, to the Rockets. Well, I mean, I'm not even sure. It's like, that's not even like a hot take. It's just like these two things were simultaneous. It was, once this thing happens, this other thing is going to happen. We had heard that the Nets, the Rockets had floated the idea of just going Suns for picks back, right? We never knew the extent of it, but
and by the way,
this could be the case.
Sorry, not to jump in, but by the way, it was always, okay, get back your own pick control. But then we were reverse engineering the process and saying, fine, do that, but then find a way to get off of some of these veteran players, because having the pick control and having the rebuild in place is only valuable if you're committed to being a very young team, a very light roster, and not having, a even low risk of a team being too competitive in one of these years going forward. So as impressive and seismic as the trade is with the New York Knicks, this second piece is equally as important, because now they go ahead and have the kind of season that'll be hard to get through, but when you come out of it, you're positioned in the 2025 draft to get that new cornerstone and make decisions around every single young player you have on your roster. So it's insane to think, to read out what they got from New York for Mikal Bridges and then say, it's right there and maybe even kind of slightly behind getting control of your immediate future here, those swaps with Houston and getting the pick control back. Man, I don't know where we want to go to from this, because now we've established how incredible move and how it resets everything for the Brooklyn Nets organization. Are you willing to have a brief conversation just about how Sean Marks, for all the mistakes he has made over the years when it comes to handling superstars, this is kind of his wheelhouse, asset management and pivoting into these type of arenas. He seems to have been able to do a very good job in this aspect of being a GM. And it's one of those things where you go, this maybe is why he's survived some of the ups and downs for this franchise.
This is a hard move. It's hard move as a GM to commit to being bad. This is a commitment to being bad for the next couple of years. No other way around it. Like that. This is what this is. This is a move to say the goal here is to lose games. The reason we want to lose games is because it's going to give us an incrementally better chance when the ping pong balls for next year are rolling through the hopper, or the proverbial hopper, that Cooper Flag could be on the other side of it, right? Like that. This is the chance to do it. These sound good in theory, and sitting through an 82 game season where the team is bad is a totally different venture. Now, the difference between being bad like they were this year, where it was bad for no reason, except for like bad for just being bad, this year is there's a slight light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be play some young guys. There's probably gonna be a lot of different rotations. They're going to try to lose games. I don't know. There's no other way to put it. Jordy Fernandez is tasked with now coaching a tanking team.
Stay up to date on all things Nets by subscribing to Locked On Nets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Rockets got in on the trading action yesterday because, according to reports, they hope to land a superstar in the near future, which may be part of the reason they got that Suns 2027 first-round pick from the Nets. The rumor mill, reports from Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN say that Houston made the deal specifically with Kevin Durant in mind, as Phoenix would want its own pick back if at some point it decided to unload its stars and rebuild. Did the Rockets start a genius long con yesterday? Locked On Rockets host Jackson Gatlin tells us if Houston can end up pulling off this major move.
This was talk about some whiplash. This was like to live through this moment, to get the Woj bomb notification that Mikal Bridges was traded to the New York Knicks for a mountain of first-round draft picks, and then to immediately have this just high of, oh my God, the Nets picks are worth so much right now, and then to have that swept away to realize that the Rockets had dealt the Nets picks back to Brooklyn in exchange for future Phoenix Suns picks was, I'll be completely honest, a little bit deflating. But as I was able to sit with it, wrap my head around it further, and try to make sense of things, I do believe that this deal is a deal for the future. It's a better long-term deal for the Rockets, and we're going to walk through this together. So first things first, let's go through how this was all structured, how it all came about, and then we'll get into, the specifics of what this means for the team going forward. So first off, I think it's important to view this trade as not two separate deals, but as one kind of very convoluted 3-team deal. So the original framework, the first domino, if you will, was we got the news that the Nets agreed to trade Mikal Bridges to the Knicks for Bojan Bogdanovic, 4 unprotected first-round picks, a protected first-round pick via the Bucks, and an unprotected pick swap and a second-rounder. That is a ton of draft capital for Mikal Bridges. So the reason this trade happened was because, I'm guessing in principle, right, the Nets had agreed to a separate trade with the Rockets behind the scenes. They were not going to get rid of Mikal Bridges unless they were able to get back their own picks. And so the Rockets have now given up the 2025 Nets swap, so they've relinquished the rights to that swap. They've also given the Nets back the 2026 first-round pick outright. So the Nets now have control of their own draft capital, of their own future for the next 2 years. Yes, that means the Cooper Flag draft. That is next year's draft, the 2025 draft. More on that here in a second. And the Rockets, in return, essentially the easiest way to think about it is they basically traded one pick swap, and one unprotected first-round pick for 2 additional pick swaps and 2 additional unprotected first-round picks. That's kind of the lay of the land. And again, this deal does not happen, or the Mikal Bridges trade with the Knicks does not happen unless the Rockets agree to this trade with Brooklyn behind the scenes. Because again, Brooklyn was digging their heels in, and the only reason they weren't willing to trade Mikal Bridges in the first place was because they wanted to remain competitive. They had zero incentive to tank. And so there's no way, there's not a chance in hell that Brooklyn does this trade unless they know for certain that they're getting those picks back from the Rockets. So the way that it works, right, Sean Marks hits up Rafael Stone, they start talking, then they agree in principle. They're like, hey, if we find a deal for Mikal, are you guys willing to give us back these picks? Rafael Stone and the Rockets say yes. They go out, they source, they find the deal for Mikal Bridges. The Knicks are willing to pay through the nose for it, which, side note here, the Knicks are going to be scary good next season. Adding Mikal Bridges to that team, and then getting everybody healthy, whew, man. Also, Mikal Bridges is I don't know, A1, number 1, Iron Man in the NBA. So seeing an unstoppable force in Mikal Bridges hit an immovable object in Tom Thibodeau and his rotations and him grinding players into dust is going to be a very interesting dynamic to watch play out next season in New York. But I don't want to get too far off the beaten path here. That's why this trade happened. Okay? So I need everybody to wrap their head around that because, again, I was very excited for a split moment there thinking, oh man, these Nets picks are going to be incredible now. That's not the case. That's not how this trade worked. There's no way that the Knicks and Nets made this move. And then the Nets were like, hey, Houston, so can we get our hands on those picks again? No, not how it worked out whatsoever. So to break it down, just as looking at the Rockets' updated kind of first-round draft pick stock, right? They didn't give up this year's pick at all. They still have the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft. In 2025, they have the better pick of Phoenix's or OKC's pick. That's what they have swap rights in there. In 2026, they only have their own draft pick. And that's only if it lands in the top 4, which hopefully, let's be honest, if the Rockets are that bad and they land a top 4 pick, then something has gone catastrophically wrong. So 2026, essentially, they don't have a first-round pick. 2027, they have the better of their own pick or Brooklyn's pick in 2027. So they did retain the 2027 pick swap, which is actually a really impressive asset now, considering the fact that Brooklyn is openly willing to bottom out now. They've still got Cam Johnson to trade. They're getting ready to fire sale everything. So the Nets are going to be bad for, at a minimum, 2 years while they have their own control of their draft picks, 2025 that the Rockets gave back, and now 2026. But that 2027 pick swap is still going to be incredibly valuable because the Nets are not, there's not a chance in hell the Nets are going to be a good, respectable team after 2 years of being an awful team. There's still not even a guarantee that they win the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, right? They could bottom out for 2 straight years, just like the Pistons have been doing, and they could still bottom out a third year in a row and be one of the worst teams in the NBA. So that 2027 pick swap has an immense amount of value now. In 2027, they also own a Phoenix pick outright. So 2 picks in 2027. In 2028, they have their own draft pick. In 2029, they have 2 first-round picks, the best 2 out of Houston's own pick, Dallas's pick, or Phoenix's pick. So they have swap rights in there, and again, they'll get the best 2 first-round picks out of Houston, Dallas, or Phoenix. Then in 2030 and in 2031, they own each of their own first-round draft picks. So that's kind of the updated lay of the land for what the Houston Rockets have as far as their draft war chest, their draft capital after this trade was made. And again, the easiest way to look at it is they traded 1 swap and 1 unprotected first-round pick from the Brooklyn Nets, 2025, 2026, for 2 future pick swaps and 2 future unprotected first-round picks via the Phoenix Suns that the Brooklyn Nets owned by way of their Kevin Durant trade. So this is now the second time, 2 times, that the Houston Rockets have kind of bet against the future of a Kevin Durant-led team, which is, you know, not a lot, but it's kind of weird that it's happened twice, right? If we had a nickel for every time that the Rockets bet against a future of a Kevin Durant-led team, the Rockets would have 2 nickels, but that's kind of weird that it's happened twice.
Stay up to date on all things Rockets by subscribing to Locked On Rockets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Up next, we've talked about a lot of picks. Now let's get to the actual picking. The NBA draft starts today, and we'll make sure you have everything you need to know going in to the first round in just a moment on the Big 6 in 60. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms applied. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed. This is the Big 6 in 60, a closer look at the biggest stories in sports. I'm Peter Bukowski. The Atlanta Hawks have the most options and the toughest decision with the first pick of the NBA draft tonight. Atlanta could set itself up for years of success with the right move. And Locked On Hawks host Brad Rowland gave one final look at the board before draft night.
Recently, basically, it's been a little bit of a moving target on the number 1 overall pick. So we'll start here. Brian Windhorst on Monday on the Hoop Collective podcast that he is the host of said the following, quote, "From what I understand, I really don't think the Hawks are taking Donovan Clingan if they stay at number 1. I think if they traded back, I think Clingan would certainly be an interesting player for them," end quote. He also said plainly on that podcast that he would be, quote, "surprised by Clingan at number 1. From there, Jonathan Gavoni of ESPN, a prominent mock draft aficionado, intel guy at ESPN, on the Low Post on Monday said the following, quote, "I think if anything but Zach Ricochet happens at 1, I think that would be a big surprise around the NBA," end quote. Notably, that quote does leave the door open for a trade. It does not narrow it to the Hawks taking Ricochet, but some pretty strong language about Ricochet going in the number 1 spot. That kind of prompted, I think, some push in the betting markets, for instance, as we'll get into in a second. Also, Woj on Tuesday night, as I'm recording this podcast, on the TV side on ESPN, said that Risacher is, quote, prominent in their conversations in Atlanta, end quote, but also said the Hawks have not fully landed on who they're going to take as of, again, earlier tonight on the ESPN broadcast. And in general, this is not an indictment of Gavoni or anybody else, but Woj's intel is certainly what I would trust probably above most people's intel on this stuff. Not analysis of the draft, because he's not a draft guy, but obviously at this time of year, he's going to have some intel that nobody else has. Also, Woj said that they're not fully in on who they're taking, but they're not currently engaged. Again, not currently engaged to move down the board. That does not rule it out, but it is notable that they're not currently in those conversations at this point in time. I was going to do a mock draft update of sorts on the podcast, but basically all of the mainstream intel-based mocks now have Risacher. And when I say that, I mean Bleacher Report and John Wasserman. I mean ESPN and Gavoni and Jeremy Woo and Sam Vecini at The Athletic, Kristen Peak of Yahoo, etc. They're all at Risacher at this point in time. Now, that does not mean Risacher is a lock. And for reference, my guy Sam Vecini had Klingon a couple days ago at number 1 overall. So it's still a little bit fluid. And as I mentioned before, there's a little bit of uncertainty no matter what. But our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, who sponsor this podcast, official sports betting partner of this podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network, FanDuel has Risacher as a minus 430 favorite right now as of about midnight Eastern time. That translates into about 81% in implied odds. So obviously likely, but not quite a lock. Klingon is plus 300. Sar is plus 750. Everyone else is 20-1 or higher. Keep in mind that the odds for number 1 overall are not the odds of the Hawks picking that player. It is number 1 overall odds. So the player that is drafted there could be traded, could be whatever. Keep that in mind. It's about draft slot, not team. All that said, so that's the intel right now. It's been for a couple of days now. I referenced this actually on the show on Sunday morning that I did, sort of a bonus episode, that it was kind of coalescing in a lot of people's minds between Risacher and Klingon if the Hawks stuck at 1. That is still kind of the feeling that I'm getting at this point in time. There is this subplot, though, around Alex Sar that we'll get into right now. So Landry Fields did an interview on Tuesday morning with 92.9 The Game, which is a local station in Atlanta on the radio side. It's actually the flagship of the Hawks, so a lot of Hawks crossovers there. Landry comes on there regularly. Steve Koonin does regularly, etc. That is a natural tie-in. But Landry said that they were, quote, almost there when deciding about number 1 overall, and he also said, quote, I have a pretty good sense of who we'll take, end quote. Obviously, he did not say who that is, nor would he ever say that. But that is also the strongest he has been so far on that question, which is basically what you expect as we get close to the big day. He did acknowledge they've had calls from teams trying to go up, but he would kind of need to be wowed, is the way he put it, by the offers to move down. And he also said, kind of just the way it all connects together in the holistic sense, the number 1 overall pick, there are other roster moves, trades, etc. It is all one big picture. It's not a bunch of silos. Keep that in mind. But the more newsy section of this interview was about Alex Sar. So it's been reported, I talked about this a lot on the show, that Alex Sar and his agent, or how you want to put that, Alex Sar has not worked out for the Hawks, and there's been some noise about that. Fields said on the record, again, recorded on a broadcast on Tuesday morning, that Sar was actually scheduled to come work out in Atlanta, and that it was on the books, is the way he put it. And then Sar's side declined to come to the workout after it was already scheduled on the books. Later said he's not bothered by that, said it was nothing novel, but something that agents just do, but also an example of why teams have to do their work early and not rely on private workouts. He did not get into detail on what the explanation was from Sar's side for not coming in, but he also said that Sar is the only player that they wanted to work out that declined to come work out for the Hawks. None of that is terribly shocking based on the report that's already been out there, but it was more candid than you would normally hear Landry Fields. Sar, conveniently, was doing press today because today was media day in New York with all the prospects. He got asked about this. I believe it was Bailey Burmaster of CBS here in Atlanta that asked the first question to Alex Sar, and he gave kind of a non-answer, but he did mention trusting his team around him, including his agents, etc., before kind of circling back to a more standard non-answer. I will say that Landry was more direct in his answers around Sar than he usually is. That could be tactical. It could not be tactical. It did strike me and some other people that I would say around the league as a little bit surprising, because if the Hawks were going to take Alex Sar, you'd be surprised if Landry would go on the record and kind of not badmouth, but like it doesn't paint Sar in the best possible light that they agreed to they had agreed to come and then that was canceled. Is it that big of a deal? I would argue no, but it is something that you would not normally hear a GM say at the same time. So I'm noting that. Jake Fisher did a follow-up interview with Sarr in New York and Sarr talks about how he was basically willing to go play for anybody. He's not going to hold out. That's been out there. I've talked about it before. I'll talk about it again. There's not like a ton of buzz that he just like refuses to go to Atlanta, but there is this like, will they or won't they? Do the Hawks take him? My stance, and I'll say it again right now, has always been, if the Hawks view Alex Sarr as the best prospect in the class, like if they have number one on the board, him not working out should not be a deterrent in taking him, in my opinion. I took Alex Sarr in a mock draft for Locked On this week as an example. And I'll get into more of my own evaluations in a second, but that's where I would be on the broad strokes here. I get it. This is not the best look in the world. I understand fans not being happy about this. Sarr, not necessarily admitting it, but Landry was pretty candid about this. So the bad blood there, any of that stuff, it could be water under the bridge in a day or two. It could not be. It could be one of those things that we talk about for years and years and years if Sarr goes somewhere else and blows up. But a little bit of drama, and that's where we are right now. And that's all the intel. Again, just to summarize, most people are giving Risa Shea the lead as far as the most common projection, number one overall, betting market. Windhorst, Gavoni, a little bit of Woj lean there, although he wasn't quite as definitive. And we'll see if Klingon's still in the mix. We'll see if Sarr's in the mix. We'll see if there's a trade. Still a lot of uncertainty compared to normal years. And as a reminder, a year ago, I guess it was 2 years ago now, 2 years ago, there was the Jabari Smith Jr., Paolo Banchero. Everyone thought it was going to be Jabari Smith Jr. And then at the very end, it was Paolo, and it was apparently Paolo all along. It's smokescreen season. So keep that in mind. Always keep your guard up.
Stay up to date on all things Hawks by subscribing to Locked On Hawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, the Hawks can pick anybody at number one, but what will the rest of the league do throughout the first round tonight? That's next on the Big 6 in 60. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. I mean, keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up a bet anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, 5 teams have odds better than 10-1 to win the World Series. According to FanDuel, the LA Dodgers are the favorites, plus 320. Right behind them, the Yankees and Phillies, each with odds at plus 450. I have that Phillies ticket. I think it's 16-1, maybe longer. But there's the Braves, 9-1, and the Orioles at plus 950. And the Guardians, who currently look like a really, really good team, at 22-1. Hold on. Can I just do that right now? Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. I'm Peter Bukowski. The NBA draft starts today and for the first time won't finish on the same day. The draft switches to a 2-day schedule this year. So what can you expect to see from your favorite team as we work through the first round tonight? Who moves up? Who moves down? Will we see any more surprise superstar moves like Mikal Bridges getting dealt as teams try to set up their futures? Wait, superstar Mikal Bridges? Did the Knicks write this? The next stars of the NBA take the first step tonight. And Locked On NBA Big Board host Rafael Barlow, Leif Thulin, and Richard Stamen sat down to break down the first round.
For starters, the Brooklyn Nets, moments before we started recording, made a trade. It's Tuesday night, so who knows what could even be happening overnight. I'm sure Kevin Durant will get traded at 1 a.m. again. That's always fun when that happens. But at the moment, the Brooklyn Nets just entered the tanking race for 2025 already. It's very interesting. I think that they got, I think, 6 or 7 picks all in all, and not a single one of them was either of the first round picks from the Knicks this year. And I think that says a lot about the draft class. What did you all think? Instant reactions real fast. I'll start with you, James. What did you think of that Nets trade for Mikal Bridges?
Cam Thomas is going to average 28 points per game next season. He is going to shoot his hardest content. But
he's
no,
going to be Jordan Poole, in a better way. He's going to do what people thought Jordan Poole would do.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, if there's ever a time for you to do it, it's for 2025. It works out for him. I think it works out for the Knicks. Yeah, that's a lot for Mikal Bridges, but strike while the iron is hot. You feel good about that situation. I would say that I personally think the Knicks aren't done, and you could probably got to make a move for Julius to get him out of there so you can re-sign Hartenstein. But that's just me.
What about you, Leaf?
Villanova's back. I mean, that's my thought. I mean, they got to do is go get Eric Paschal, Phil Booth, and Omari Spellman, and they got the whole squad that was a buzzsaw through the 2018 tournament. Well, but like it makes sense. They're going all in. I think that Hartenstein's not going to be able to return because they don't have enough money now with OG, Bridges, Brunson, Hart, DiVincenzo, all those guys. I don't think they have enough money unless they dump Julius Randle, which I don't think many teams are going to want Julius Randle for the price tag he's got. So I think they're in a little bit of a pickle financially, but they're going all in, and I respect it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking, I think, a lot about the Brooklyn Nets for the next 12 months because next year's draft is that good. But this episode is about the 2024 draft. We're going to table that discussion, the rest of the way. Who knows if the Nets even make another trade? Cam Johnson, maybe even Cam Thomas. Maybe they trade him for one of those picks again for a team that has a top 30 or 31 pick if they want to trade with the Raptors. Who knows? But let's predict some of the chaos. What are y'all's expectations for the draft tonight, I guess, when you're listening to this? What are y'all's expectations just in general of some themes, anything, what you expect to happen, like weird number one picks? Like, is there going to be somebody different? Let's just start with that. Who will be the number one pick?
Reese Shea.
Yeah, Reese Shea will be number one. I'll go. This is my theory, right? And I'm gonna stop right here. Reese Shea is gonna go number one. Sarr is gonna go number two. The Rockets are gonna trade the pick, and chaos will ensue after that.
That's what I think. I think it's going to be Rockets trade, and whoever trades into it takes Klingon, and then the Spurs take Castle, and then if it's still the Pistons. And I think teams would want to trade up if Castle were to fall out of the top four. But if it's still the Pistons, I think it'll be Reed Shepherd.
Yep.
And that's your top five. I feel pretty good about that, assuming the Rockets trade, which I think they will. And then six, James and I talked about this a couple days ago, but 6 through 8 is where the draft gets crazy because I was looking at betting lines just out of curiosity to see what the books are hearing. The Dalton Connect's over-under is 7.5, meaning, and it was favored to go below 7, meaning he'd go 1 through 7. Devin Carter was favored to go within the top 8. And then you still have Cody Williams, Ron Holland, Matas Buzelis, Nikola Topic. So all those younger guys that you typically associate with like high upside, they were projected in similar ranges. Cody Williams was 8.5, Topic was 9.5. I'm very curious what the Charlotte Hornets and Detroit Pistons do. And I think that'll dictate what happens the rest of the draft.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Reed fell to 5. I think that'd be a real steal for somebody. But at the same time, like 6'2" guards that aren't true point guards are the most desirable players. So I do think that is possible. I also agree, though. I think the Rockets trade the pick, and that is absolutely where the floodgates open. My theory with some of the trades in general is that some of these sellers are going to be okay to sell for pennies on the dollar. I think someone like Detroit may just not want to pick 5, and they will take anything to move back, even in 2 to 5 spots. I mean, I can see them being like, I think they could be the team that really swings early for Tijon Salon if it's not the Spurs. I think that'd be an interesting little outcome, but who knows? They may not. What's up?
You said Detroit would swing for Tijon?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if does they need that upside play? He's not necessarily the day one guy, but if you could get another pick in the first round to get an immediate contributor, if they're one of the teams that feels, hey, this draft doesn't have that much of a drop off from say 10 to 20 something, they might do it. I could see it. It's kind of in theory. Like I think it's a bold take, but like at the same time, this draft is going to be all over the place. And I fully expect something like in 2016, the Bucks randomly took Thon Maker. 2013, obviously Anthony Bennett went number 1. Weird stuff happens in bad classes. I think someone's going to take a very strong swing for the fence and try and outsmart everybody.
Let me ask you a question, though. I'll ask you guys a question. We all agree that the Rockets make a trade.
Yeah.
Who are they going to trade? Who's going to be the trade partner? Theories.
Hopefully my Utah Jazz.
You think Utah?
I don't know if I think that. I think I said hopefully, but I mean, there's actually a compelling package that could be made. If you're the Jazz, you've got 10, 29, 32. that probably doesn't do it, those picks. But you also have a bunch of future picks. Does 10, 32, and a future first that belongs to the Cavaliers or Timberwolves for next year's draft get the job done? And the Rockets don't want necessarily Reed Shepherd. They don't necessarily want Donovan Clingan, who are the picks there. It doesn't make sense to take Stephon Castle. So maybe they're amenable to that. Maybe it's as simple as the Grizzlies want Donovan Clingan desperately, and they'll do anything to get him move up 9-3. And I don't know what else they'd put into that. But I think those type of teams that are drafting 9, I guess those were 9 and 10, but the teams within the backside of the top 10, I think, are the most likely trade partners.
Yeah, I have no idea who they would trade with. I don't think Phoenix is going to take the number 3 pick in this draft for like KD. I also just don't think that's going to happen. It would be crazy. And who knows?
What about Miami? In the sense that Miami, look, Jimmy Butler, it'd be 35. Pat Riley will get you out there before it's too late. And, you know, he hasn't played 60 games, but like 1 or 2 times. I'm just, you know, I'm speculating here. Again, is there somebody you would trade up for? I mean, maybe. But, like, my thinking is Ime Udoka just saw the Celtics win a championship with his boys. He wants to win right now. They won those games in April. Whether or not you think those games that they won in March and April were real or not, I mean, that's up for debate. But, like, they want to win now. So who has a win now player available that you could trade up with, who would also at the same time be on the edge of, maybe we should kind of like start over? I don't know, but like I could think Miami, maybe in a sense, but it's like who you want KD, maybe you don't give up KD. I don't think a new owner is going to give up KD right now. Who's next up? Jimmy Butler. I don't know. I don't know if they can get Paul George. I'm just making stuff up, but like they want a win now guy probably on the wing. So that's just what I think Ime Udoka's reasoning would be right now.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time. I feel like they might do something as simple as just trading with the Spurs and doing 4 and 8 for 3. But like, what incentive, I guess, is there for the Spurs to do it? I'm having a hard time, but these trades come out of left field. Like in the past, just speaking from, I remember in 2013 when the Sixers nobody saw Drew Holiday getting traded that night. Like that was completely out of left field. Things do happen. So I think that something like that could come into play where someone big that we, on a team that was trending down fully commits to the rebuild, especially like we knew in 2014, it was hyped up to be the same way this class was. It's actually probably parallel. There was no number 1, consensus number 1. It was considered a bad class. Next year, everybody was looking towards it. Andrew Wiggins was hyped up to be Maple Jordan. That was his whole nickname. Obviously, he didn't live up to it, but you had Jabari Parker was also already hyped going into Duke. I think there might be stuff like that where we see a team go, you know what, we're just going to go into rebuild mode. Who knows who that other team is? I don't think it's Phoenix personally. And I don't know who else would fit that, like that is ready to do that. Utah's not going to do it. Because I just don't think anybody wants that number 3 pick this year. It's very tough to balance unless it's part of a bigger trade.
Do you think the Spurs would even want to do that trade? Like I get moving up like 4 and 8 and something for 1 maybe, but that's for 3. Like what are they doing?
Yeah,
they're going to take Castle anyway, unless you take Clingan at 3, and that I just think that's redundant. Like I've seen stuff about that, so that makes no sense to me. So I think it has to be either a swing from left field like the Heat, or a team like the Jazz or Grizzlies who have a desirable player. Like the Jazz, I think, would take Castle, and I think that the Grizzlies would sprint to the podium and take Clingan. And I think you need to be within decent range to make that trade. Like you can't send a low pick.
Yeah.
So I think that it's got to be another team. Like even though it just doesn't make sense for the Spurs.
Stay up to date on all things NBA draft by subscribing to Locked On NBA Big Board, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. once said he'd never play for the Yankees, but yesterday he changed his tone. Is there a reason for worry in Toronto? The Big 6 and 60. We'll be right back. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms applied. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. I'm Peter Bukowski. We wrap things up today in Omaha. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. previously said he would never play for the Yankees and hasn't been shy about a dislike that he says is personal. But Monday, reporters asked Guerrero if he'd ever reconsider playing for New York, and the star seemed more open to the idea, saying, "This is a business," in his answers. The change of tone has the speculators swirling, and the Yankees need a first baseman with Anthony Rizzo out. So, Locked On Blue Jays host Braden Nowasco and Carter First, let us know if there's any real chance of Vladdy Jr. moving teams.
Vlad has repeatedly said that he will never play for the New York Yankees. No matter what happens, he will never play for them.
I love it so much. I hate the Yankees. Obviously, you know we hate the Yankees on this podcast. That's why Vladdy's our guy. Even though he could, again,
this is going to disappoint you.
Oh, I haven't seen this article, but I just want to quickly say that hopefully this doesn't disappoint me to that point. But yeah, if you hate the Yankees, I love you that much more. I'm going to leave it at that. Maybe I'll switch up here. Maybe I'll be a hypocrite, but we'll see what happens.
No, this is going to hurt you though. Vlad says, "I'm a worker. I'm a professional, and I go out on the field to play." And he was asked, would he ever consider to play for the New York Yankees? "I sat down to talk with my dad, with my family, and that's that. Like I tell you, I'm a player, and if the team picks me or if they do something, it's because they need me, obviously. And I'll be happy to help any team. But right now I'm focused on helping my team and trying to get out of this bad streak." So he obviously switched up his answer. It's the first time in his entire career that he didn't outright, say I'm not playing for the New York Yankees. It was a little bit of something there. Does this hurt you? Is this leaning in a way of, with the bad losing streak, if this team can't pick it up, is Vlad an option to be moved? In my books, it's an absolutely not. But I don't want maybe your opinion, but what you think is a possibility for this team. Dal, I want to start with you.
Yeah, that's a tad disappointing to hear. And the Yankees are going to go and try to get someone like Vladdy too. But I don't think he should be moved. That's my opinion, but you never know what Atkins is going to do. Like you never know what he's thinking. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was willing to trade Vladdy to a division rival. I already won his head on a pike. So if he did that, that would be the last straw. But like I said, he shouldn't be moved. He's the face of this franchise. I enjoy watching him, good or bad. Well, actually not true. When he's swinging at the slider or grounding out the shortstop, I don't like that. But he's our guy, like Carter said, and I'd be sad to see him go, and I'd be really angry too, given if it was a trade within the division.
Yeah, just based off kind of what you said in that article, I don't know if this was necessarily like I'm going to the Yankees thing. This just might be if the Toronto Blue Jays go into a rebuild. I don't think Vladdy necessarily wants to be a part of that. He was supposed to be the thing that changed this franchise. Him, Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio used to be the big three here, and obviously Kevin Biggio is now on the Dodgers playing whatever. He's playing kind of just Kevin Biggio style ball. But that's a completely different subject. With Vladimir Guerrero Jr., this just might open the door with him just not being a Blue Jay for his entire career. And I think that really stems from this rebuilding stuff. But I would like to say, if Ross Atkins, I don't think Ross Atkins is going to be in the position to trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr., just the way he's constructed this lineup, constructed this entire Blue Jays team over his tenure with the Jays since 2016. I don't think he's going to have the option to trade Vladdy. But somehow, if Vladdy was traded to the Yankees, to start off, you got to get the biggest haul of all time. If you're trading to a division rival, you're going to have to see this guy a ton of times throughout the year. And I just want to ask you guys this. how long would Vladimir Guerrero Jr. last the New York Yankees with how crazy and chaotic their fan base is? You think Vladdy getting picked off at second base and then kind of just posing with his hand behind his head? Do you think the Yankees fans are going to like that? Do you think the Yankees fans are going to like Vladdy bring out the home run jacket when they're down 8-1? Like, they would crucify Vladimir Guerrero Jr. if he went to the New York Yankees. Might be worse than an Aaron Hicks situation from a couple of years back. So if Vladdy wants to go test his luck with the New York Yankees, good luck to you, man. I don't think you're going to enjoy it too much. Maybe playing with Juan Soto and Aaron Judge would be kind of fun. But overall, with those fans, if it's not going completely 100% successful, it's going to be a struggle for him. So for me with this, I'm not as much taking it for the New York Yankees thing. I don't think they should move Vladimir Guerrero Jr. As we've seen, he's been hitting a little bit better recently. He is the face of the franchise, a guy that is a homegrown talent for the Toronto Blue Jays. You don't get a lot of guys saying that they would be okay with staying their entire career with the Jays. Again, maybe this is a little bit of a switch up. I think it's more so just with the state of the team, maybe, and unless there is damaged relationships in the front office. Obviously, arbitration isn't great for your player's mindset and all that kind of stuff. But again, we're speculating right now. I'm glad that he is focused on this season because you still have a lot of games to play. You still have over half a season to play. I think this is more so of an end of a year problem. And then especially next year going into his contract year, it's going to be talked about a whole lot more, in my opinion, when you're talking about this Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette even throw in there, and just the future of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, and I think when you look sort of at this article, I think, what everybody's taking away from this is that, he's being a little bit more open about the trades, and he's not shutting them down right away, and I think that's a pretty big switch up from how he's been his entire career. Could I see him getting traded to the Yankees? I think that's a very, very large leap, because I don't think the Blue Jays would trade in division, not one of their homegrown superstars. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's on the table and what's off the table right now. So I think that's sort of an interesting piece to look at. But Carter, I'm going to throw it back to you as we got a couple little bit more little clips that you sort of put together.
Yeah, so I just want to start out by, if the Yankees want anyone, take George Springer. You can have George Springer if you want. I'm more than fine with giving you that contract. We don't even need anything back from him. We'll take cash considerations. You can just take George Springer, take him off our hands, maybe turn his career around. Who knows? But you're probably not going to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. from the guys.
Stay up to date on all things Blue Jays by subscribing to Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks again to all of our hosts for their expert analysis on the biggest stories of the day. Follow your favorite team's podcast wherever you listen and on YouTube for new episodes every weekday. Tune in again tomorrow for a new hour of the 6 biggest stories in sports. This has been the Big 6 in 60 from the Locked On Podcast Network.